Welcome to the Create More Intimacy podcast. I'm Elisa Stoddard, and I help men stop chasing sex and start building real connection so they finally feel close, connected, and wanted again. Welcome back to the podcast. Today, we're going to talk about some extensions of last week's podcast. So if you haven't listened last week, I'd recommend that you go back and listen to episode 13. It's about obligation sex. And today's topic is hard, but it asks a really important question. And that is sex the only way that you feel liked? Because if it is, first of all, I want you to know you're not alone in this. But I also want to show you why that pattern never gives you what you're really looking for and what to do instead. There's some hope here. Let's start talking about what you think you want. On the surface, you want to feel close. You want to feel loved and chosen and wanted. And for a long time, what has filled that role for you has been sex. And it's the only way that you have felt any of those feelings. And when that's happening, you feel more secure and feel wanted and loved. And when it's not, that's when you start to spiral and you wonder if she even likes you anymore. And you probably try to hold it together, but inside it starts to feel very personal. Maybe she's called you needy, or maybe she's really rejected your advances, and that feels really terrible. What I observe men doing is pretending that they don't care. They get good at pretending that they don't care, but the truth is it totally hurts. The piece that's missing is that you have never been taught what to do with that pain except to chase sex or to just shut down. What is it that you actually are seeking? What are you really seeking here? I had a client recently tell me that when his wife turns him down for sex, he doesn't just feel rejected. He feels unlovable and wonders if he matters, if she even likes him. And what I could see immediately was that this wasn't really about sex. This was about validation, about worth. As we talked more, I asked him what it was he was hoping to feel from the sex. And he paused and he said, well, that's how I know that I'm important. And I just want to feel close. And I know he was sincere in that. But the real thing that he was craving was to feel chosen and to feel wanted, not just physically, but emotionally too. And he wanted proof that he was lovable. This outsources your worth to someone else's body. And if they aren't willing or cannot give that to you, then you will constantly feel rejected. The worst part about this is, though, is that she can comply and you will still not feel loved, especially if she did just that, just comply. If it wasn't mutual, you can always tell when it's duty, if it's obligation sex, right? Here's what I want you to understand. Your needs can't be met by someone else's body. And I also am going to say something that is going to sting. And my guess is that you won't have ever considered this before. Sex isn't a need. So many men talk about, I need it. You don't understand, I need it. And I want to be really clear. There's lots of needs in our life. We need air, we need food and water, and we need shelter, but we don't need sex. I want to pause here and name this very clearly. Sex is a desire. It is a wonderful part of a connected relationship, but it is not a need. Food, water, shelter, those are needs again. But you are not wrong for wanting sex. So when I hear you say, I need this, what I understand you to really mean is, I don't know how else to feel loved. That's it. That's it right there. That's the hard truth. If the only way that you feel okay is through sex, then you are asking someone else's body to do the work that you have failed to do to grow emotionally. And that isn't a partnership. That is full on, full court pressure. I want to say this lovingly and directly. You're not entitled to your partner's body. She gets to choose what she shares, how often she shares, with whom she shares, just like you do have autonomy over your body. I want to put a finer point on this even. Only when a baby is an infant is it appropriate for another person to rely on or have needs met through someone else's body. And I know I don't have to tell you this, but you're not an infant anymore. You are a grown man. And that means that it's time to develop new skills that help you up level into this area of awareness around how you meet your needs. This is tough stuff. This is hard. I want you to understand why this pattern even exists. Let's look at this on a deeper level. And this is the work that I did with my client. If sex is the only way that you feel liked, it probably goes back a lot further in your life, in your childhood, than your current relationship. So let me ask you this. When was the first time you felt invisible? When was the first time you felt like you didn't matter? Maybe it was when you were a kid trying to get your dad's attention or your parents' attention or your adults to notice you. Maybe your mom was overwhelmed and emotionally unavailable. Perhaps you learned really early that love had to be earned. Or messages like that you were too much, too needy, or that you weren't enough, or that you were a burden. And you might not remember all of those moments. You might not remember specific conversations even, but I know your body does. And that kind of emotional neglect leaves a wound, and one that says, I only matter if I perform, or I'm a perfect child so that my parents don't have to worry about me. I hear a lot of times that people say, I had a wild older sibling and my parents were just overwhelmed by them. And so I tried really hard to do everything perfectly or to be the golden child. These are exactly the kinds of situations where wanting to be loved comes from how useful you are. So messages can come that sound a lot like you're really only wanted if you're useful to a parent or caregiver, that you were only lovable and acceptable when you gave them something. And now as an adult, what do? Well, you reach for sex. And it's not just for that connection, but for proof that you're still wanted and that you're still worthy, that you're okay. That proof, it doesn't last, does it? You know it doesn't. Because that wound, it is trying to fill something that was never about sex to begin with. Sex has become your coping mechanism and how you have learned to be validated. If people want to have sex with you, you're probably okay. You're probably good. You're wanted. And that is why obligation sex is so painful. Here's another problem with this. Even when you get it, even if it's not mutual, if she's just going through the motions, you still don't feel good afterward. In fact, so many of you talk to me about how that can actually even feel worse. And you question whether she even wanted it, really? And you know she didn't. She just complied. And you wonder if she just gave in to avoid a fight. And that doesn't make you feel wanted. So maybe you even feel guilty for having pushed her and entitled because it's how you feel loved, but then you feel a little pitied or ashamed. And it's an ugly cycle that doesn't actually give you that feeling that you've been craving. And that cycle, this is exactly what happens when sex becomes the transaction. It's not a solution, it's kind of a setup for a really unpleasant, non fulfilling outcome, and it deepens the wound. What I want you to understand, though, that I think that you've been missing is that you equate sex with being wanted. What you really wanted was closeness, but what you got was compliance only. Real connection looks like what? So, if we're not going to use sex as the fix, then what do we do? I'll be honest, the reason we're here is so that you can help uplevel your life. So, since we can't control her, what we will do is start to recognize that the fix really starts with you. It starts with your willingness to get curious about where the true pain is really coming from. It starts with you exploring what rejection brings up in you, not just in that moment, but also in your story, the story you're telling about what happened as a child, how you coped and survived your childhood. And also to stop outsourcing your sense of worth to your partner's body. Now, I know this is not easy work, because it's a total paradigm shift, but it is the only kind that actually heals. And at the same time, you get to expand your definition of connection. Real connection isn't just about physical touch, it's emotional, it's mental, it's relational, it can be spiritual. It's her reaching for your hand, not because she's bracing herself for where it's going to lead, but because she actually wants to feel close to you. It's laughing together. It's helping without being asked, meaning that you show up as an actual partner and invested in your relationship. It's about making eye contact and staying present in a conversation and not letting phones and distractions get in the way. It's taking time. It's being able to sit next to each other in silence and still feel known. Now, I have heard men say this, and maybe you have thought this too. And it's, what is even the point of marriage if I don't get sex? Isn't that part of the deal? And I want you to know I absolutely get it. I know you want to feel wanted. You want to share a life that includes passion and touch, and I know that matters. But here's the problem. If you see your wife's body as the prize for being a good husband, then you have reduced her down to vending machine validation. And marriage is not a transaction. It is a relationship and a partnership. And the more you try to extract connection through pressure, the less likely you are to experience the intimacy you have been wanting. And that's why this has to change. That's why you have to change and you have to make the first steps. But the beautiful part here is that you're in full control over this. You get to take the first steps. You get to see the changes in real time as you show up differently. Because when you do, connection becomes something you build together, not something you beg for. Because I know you haven't been begging for connection, you've been begging for sex. That's the rejection. Here's a final thought for you. I want to leave you with this. If you have been trying to prove your worth, feeling validated through sex, if you've been measuring how loved you are by how often she says yes, then you are living in a loop that will never satisfy you. Because no one else's body, no matter how often they say yes, can make you feel whole inside. You aren't broken, and this isn't something you can't fix, but I do want you to understand that you are overdue for a new way of being. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week. Thanks for being here. If something in this episode hit home, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. It helps more men find the support they need. And if you are ready to get help or take the next step, you'll find the link to book a free call in the show notes. I'll see you next time.